Hello, in this video I will show you how to install Contao on a web server. Let's start with the configuration of your hosting. To do this, connect to your server with an SFTP program, such as FileZilla. Now we have to create a certain folder structure for Contao to run properly. Also, it is important that you always create Contao in its own folder structure and do not mix it with other systems. First of all, we create a general folder, for example, for the Contao version. This is still free to define. In my case I call it Contao 413 because I install a Contao 4.13. Now we enter this folder and next is very important, we have to create a folder called public, that means again create directory public. It's important that you keep this folder structure exactly, otherwise Contao can't work correctly. Once we have created the folder structure correctly, we switch to the control panel of our hosting provider. Depending on which provider this is, this can look different. I have taken the provider all-inkle for this, and we go into the editing of the domain. In the domain, we now have to set this just created directory correctly so that this now becomes our website root or root directory. Depending on the hoster it is called differently. In my case, the directory is now Contao 413 public, which means that the configuration should also look like this. Furthermore, I used the PHP version 8.1. Also, you should always use a SSL certificate so that the whole connection is secured. After you have configured the web server root, you need a database. For Contao to work properly, I recommend you always create a new empty database. With all-inkle this is easy, just click here on Create New Database. With any other web hoster, there are also options to create new databases. Now that we have properly completed the configuration of the hosting, we switch to the Contao.org website. Here we need to download the Contao Manager. To do this, simply click on Download on the homepage and you will be taken to the download area. On this page you will find the Managed Edition section, and now you can download the corresponding Contao Manager by clicking on Download. When the download is complete, we switch back to our FTP program and should now have our Contao Manager here. As you can see, there is now a file ContaoManager.far. We now need to transfer this file to our web server in the public directory. To ensure that the Contao Manager is transferred correctly, you should make sure that the binary mode is used in your FTP program. In FileZilla, you can check this by going to Settings, then to the FTP File Types section, and switch to the binary mode. Once you have done that, you can now transfer the Contao Manager to your public directory. If the transfer is done correctly, you have to rename the Contao Manager, go to the file, rename it, and add .php to the end of the file. Very important, please do this change of the file type only after you have transferred the file to the server. Otherwise there could be problems during the transfer. When the transfer is finished, we can start with the installation and setup of the control manager. To do this, open your browser and enter the URL of your website. In my case I took the domain contao.training, and now we call the Contao Manager. To do this, we type contaomanager.far.php in our address bar. If everything is correct, a welcome screen should appear. Now we need to configure a user account for the Contao Manager. Important is, this user account is completely independent from the backend user of the Contao, that means, this user account is only used for the administration of the Contao Manager. When do you need to access the Contao Manager? Whenever you want to install updates for Contao, add new extensions or perform certain system maintenance tasks. So think about a username for your account now and write it down, also a password. Once you have saved your password and username, click on Create Account. After the short system check is done, here comes the welcome screen. We'll click on Get Started. And the Contao Manager will check the web server setup again. As you can see, I have a green check here because I just put correctly in the subfolder public. If the Contao Manager detects a problem with the web server configuration, you will get a hint so that you can correct this directory structure again. In our case, we have already done everything correctly and we can click on Continue. Now the installation wizard will ask you which Contao version you want to install. Very important for you. At the time of this video, I would definitely recommend that you install Contao 4.13 because it is a so-called LTS version and gets updates and security patches until February 2025. If you already want to use Contao 5, then I have to warn you that many extensions are not fully compatible and therefore not suitable for beginners. So if you begin with Contao now, it's best to choose version 4.13. I will do that now as well. We set to version 4.13 and then click on Install. Now Contao will be installed on your server in the background. You can also see the whole thing in more detail, for example by displaying the console output here. Then you can see exactly what state the installation is already in. Great! The installation is now complete and we then need to configure the database. For this we open the so-called install tool, which we can open with a click right here. Because we open the install tool for the first time, we have to accept the license now and we assign a password here. To make it easier for you, I would use the same password for the install tool and for the Contao Manager. Now we come to the database connection. We have already created a new database in the first step when configuring the hosting, and here we have received the corresponding credentials. We enter these credentials here. After you have inserted the corresponding credentials, you can click on Save Settings. If everything is correct, the item update database should appear. As you can see, Contao or the Contao-Install-Tool wants to update the database. In this case, we simply click on Update Database and the corresponding queries will be executed. The database is up to date. We do not want to import a template. Here you could for example install a complete demo. But we want to skip that now. We will create an administrator account for the Contao backend. Here you can use the same password as for the Contao Manager. This depends on your password philosophy, but make sure that you use a strong password because this account can be used to manage the entire Contao installation. After you have entered the appropriate data, click on Create Administrator Account. Now we are done with the installation of Contao and can click on Contao Backend. And now we log into our backend with our just created admin. If everything worked, you should now have an empty Contao installation and see down here that the Contao version of 4.13 is installed. If you switch to the front end, you will see that nothing happens here yet because Contao is delivered completely empty without any demo data. If you enjoyed this video now, I would be happy about a thumbs up. Or if you have any questions, just leave me a comment.